Gigless Podcast, Season 3. All right, Dane, bring us in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Gigless Podcast, Season 3, a podcast showcasing the works and talents of those who lost their gigs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This podcast will feature a range of creatives from the tri-state area who are young visionaries and who contribute to their craft despite the recent events that have happened. Join us today as our host Remi L speaks with Andrew Nieporent, a singer, songwriter, music therapist, and co-host of the Ridgewood Coffee Company's virtual open mic. In this episode, Andrew discusses his work as a music therapist through Telehealth, his experiences as a singer-songwriter during the pandemic, as well as shares his insight from his years of experience as a performer. His newest release, The Second Renaissance, is currently being released on a weekly basis and can be found in the show notes of this episode. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third season of the Gigless Podcast. I'm your host, Remi L. Today, our guest is Andrew Nieporent. He is from the local North Jersey music scene, and we are going to talk about everything that has happened in this past year. It is currently April 2021. And we are at this third phase of the Gigless Podcast where, we're still in this gigless journey, but things have gotten better, especially compared from last April. So in this season, we're going to be trying to kind of find out where everyone's at, kind of find out where everyone's going, and all the lessons in between. So, Andrew, let's start off. For our listeners who have never met you or don't know any of your work, What do you do? Where can they find you? Where did you go to school? What's your profession?
All right. So for a living, my main source of income is that I work as a music therapist. I work for a private practice called Jam and Gen Music Therapy. We work with a variety of different people with different special needs, and we use music as the modality to bring about positive change in their clinical goals. So that's so I'm a sort of nominally a professional musician in that way, and so I make my living playing guitar, in a clinical setting, but on the side, and as anybody who is active in the local music scene or is creative in their own music in any way knows, it's more than a hobby. It's a way of life. It's a way of being, lifestyle. So I'm a songwriter. I've been a songwriter since I was 13 years old. I'm 33 years old now, and I write, I record. And I play, and I host open mic nights, and I still do all of those things. But as you were saying, it's been heavily impacted by this past year. Yeah.
So you're a musician who has been in the medical field during this time, right? Because your patients and what you do with music therapy.
I mean, I'm not in a medical setting,
Right.
What the pandemic did is it drove most of our practice virtual. So, which is the thing that we maybe couldn't have even conceived of before this. So most of my sessions are done on Zoom, sitting exactly in the seat that I'm currently in, talking to you. When I am in person, I'm at schools. There is one client of mine where I see him in person. There was another client where I was seeing them in their home. They recently discontinued for unrelated reasons. And right now I'm vaccinated, so I'm at a point where I am open to in-person sessions, but obviously it's a global, broad thing. It's not an on and off switch. Not everybody is vaccinated. People's risk levels are different. It's a whole thing. So I've not been ever like in the front line in like a medical setting in person during the pandemic. Although the fact that I do what I do for a living allowed me to get pretty early on the line for a vaccine. So,
Right.
if there was a client that like I have new clients asking me to come to their house like this week. So it's
Right. Right. And I know that from, like as a musician, and especially as someone who does it within that type of setting, that um, you know, your gigs are essentially different from, the typical, like, in a room on a stage. You're very like one-on-one and personal with somebody.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think of music therapy sessions as gigs in the same way, I guess. It's a completely different animal.
So tell us about that, because music therapy is still like very new to a lot of people. A lot of it's something that like that people outside the music space, I feel, when I'm like, oh yeah, there's such a thing as music therapy, they're like, what? you
Yeah.
know? So
Well,
let's talk a little bit about that, and maybe our listeners can learn more about just how, that, you're a professional guitar player, you are a music therapist, like, just to build the picture of
yeah.
the music therapy. Yeah.
Sure. To back it up, I mean,
Right.
I sort of said it a little bit when I said what I do at my job, but music therapy is it's a real thing. It's a clinical discipline, and it's a lot more than just the fact that when you hear your favorite music, that makes you feel good. Although certainly we love that, and the reason why there is a music therapy is partially to do with that, but it's more than that. I went to Montclair State. I have a master's degree in this. I went through, several hours of clinical training and then an internship to do it. And it's a field that has a body of research to it and practices that have evolved, just like other fields like art therapy, other creative arts therapies, or other therapies like like your standard talk therapy or your speech therapy. With music, it's cool because it cuts to the core of something that we feel is essential to our common humanity. We've always had music. There's never been a culture on Earth that arose without its own music. So that's a very meaningful thing. So I guess the best way to explain how doing music therapy is different from just performing, I guess, is a
Right.
or even teaching, honestly, because sometimes that gets a little confused. Is We don't do anything with our musical skills that is not intended to bring about positive change in a person's therapeutic goals. It had a lot of negatives in it, but I feel like that was the best way to explain that. Like, there's a range of things I can do with my voice, with my guitar playing, with my sense of rhythm, whatever it is. But in a music therapy session, I will only do the things that are meant to help the client. Whereas when I'm performing, I'm creating so I guess in a music therapy session, it's also an aesthetic experience, but it's not for its own sake. When I'm performing or recording an album, I'm making art for its sake, for you to enjoy. Now, maybe and I hope if I'm doing my job right with that, my art will make you feel better, will make you happy, will make you think, all of that. But I'm not doing that first and foremost to bring about those things for you. wonderful, beautiful thing when that happens. Whereas it's not an accident when music therapy
Right.
is helping. And
Right.
sometimes if it's not helping, it means we have to keep figuring out, the best things we should do.
Right. And so one of the, things that has been happening this year is a lot more people have been talking openly about subjects such as like, mental health and self-care.
Yes.
And have you experienced more like an uptick in like the desire and the need for music therapy? Because I know that it's become more popularized with more people talking about these things.
Sure. Well, I mean, I can tell you that when in March of 2020, we lost a huge amount of the clients that we had because it was, everyone was, obviously scared at the time. The pandemic was such an unknown. The virus was, it was unclear, a million things about how it spread and what it could do to you. And so,
Right.
independent of any state regulations, like a week in advance of those, as we saw what was happening in Europe, what was beginning to happen here. My clients were saying, "Hey, let's take like 2 weeks off. Let's take
Right.
3 weeks off. Let's take the next week off. Out of an abundance of caution, right? All of that, and that obviously, then we went into a lockdown. So, and I think a lot of
Right.
people, if you don't work in a field like this, you maybe don't. A lot of people experienced that. Myself included. There's a lot of things we wanted to do, and all of a sudden we couldn't do them, right? But for a lot of these families, they were ahead of the curve, so to speak. They did not want me in their home for the time being, and they would have let me back in way too early without all of that. So it was a very chaotic time. So we lost a lot of clients, and then when we picked up the virtual thing, and we weren't prepared to do this. We had to build this up. We had to figure out how to do this. In the first week of talking about this, it was like, who's suitable? And then we stopped talking about which kid can do it and said, let's try every kid and see what happens, see who surprises us. And only, so many were down. And keep in mind, like, our practice's bread and butter is autistic children who have some behaviors who you need to kind of chase after, pick them up under the arms and plop them down in a seat. Very not suitable for teletherapy. Only a small number, right, maybe. But then what began to happen is our practice began to, create some agreements with various group homes. We moved much more into adults. That's an oversimplification, but my caseload, to make a long story short, is now the same size as it was before the pandemic. It's just mostly virtual and much more adult.
Well, that's great to know. To know that you have a high consistency once again, equally matched to before the pandemic and everything. And I'm happy that you guys were able to adapt, especially, everyone adapted in a different way, and going virtual was like the main way that a lot of people adapted. But usually what happens is can it be something that's successful when it's a very physical thing? And I'm stuttering a lot, but music is, it's audio and it can be done, virtually. So that thankfully, saved you guys and
too. The demand is there. It's not
right.
feasible with everyone. Although the demand again is now picking back up in the former thing, because there are some families, maybe they're vaccinated, maybe they feel less risk now, and they are beginning to call, saying, hey, can we do this, and can you come in person? It's like literally this week I'm speaking to my employers about this. It's like happening as we speak.
Right. And so, it's April 2021.
Yep.
Things, for the most part, restrictions in the state of New Jersey, where we're both located, have pretty much lessened down to wear a mask and, socially distance.
Yeah. And like, that show at Prudential isn't happening next week.
What show at Prudential?
That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
I'm saying, that's not a restriction. I mean, it's a thing is not happening because a restriction still exists. But like, it's kind of, that's like the tallest order, obviously, indoor, theatery stuff. That's, yeah.
There's definitely, I know, and by following my previous guests on Gigless and just by seeing a lot of people, I know that there's going to be a lot of outdoor shows this summer. I know that there were a few last year, but now I feel like everybody, because all the restaurants are open again, everybody is trying to get back out there. And you said that you host and organize shows, so what's the plan, Mr. Organizer?
So I haven't booked like a show in a long time. Like I did that a lot in college when I was at Ramapo. Before show booking at Ramapo College was finally allocated to its rightful place in the music industry major, which sounds like it makes sense now. There was this club called Rama Shows where anybody who liked music could try to get, their friend's band booked. I mean, and so I used to book back then, but mainly, I'm an open mic host. I host the open mic night at the Ridgewood Coffee Company in Ridgewood, New Jersey.
Love that place.
Yeah, you know it, huh?
Yeah, I love that place. It's very good coffee.
Did you ever come in on a Monday for open mic night?
I did not come in on Mondays for an open mic night. I had to teach those nights. Mondays were always teaching nights for me.
No worries.
But I went to Bergen, so I know of that place. But I definitely, like, again, one of my biggest regrets is not going out. I went to, mind you, I went to a lot of local shows, and I supported and surprised my friends, and would go and especially to a lot of art galleries, a lot of local stuff. I would host stuff. But now that, like, after a year of it being gone, I personally have that guilt that, like, there's going to be a time when everything is all good and I'm vaccinated and everything's all like better and healed and stuff. I'm gonna be like every weekend, like, I'm gonna be binging it.
One of my favorite bands is the Mountain Goats, and there's the lyric in their song Up the Wolves is, "There's gonna come a day when you feel better. You'll rise up free and easy on that day." Right?
Yeah, "Light of the Clear Blue Morning" by Dolly Parton has been like that. Got me through the summer.
Listen, I got the Moderna vaccine. I got the Dolly Parton vaccine.
I'm so upset because I'm set up to get Pfizer.
Pfizer vaccine offered to you, but still.
Yeah. No, I was supposed to get Moderna, and then I was just like, singing vaccine, and then they changed it to Pfizer, and I was like, I was like,
the company that makes Viagra. Oh well.
Oh well. I don't know. Maybe my heart will be going. I'm kidding.
So the open mic at the Ridgewood Coffee Company is something. It's my baby. I'm very, very proud of it. I have. I'm on the third non-consecutive stint that I've hosted the open mic. I hosted it way back in summer 2009 when it was totally new, and watched the scene that was already really blossoming just reach a flowering time in Ridgewood. And then I went back to college. I stopped, and the open mic got canceled at the time. Came back the next summer with some other people. I attended, didn't host. Then spring of 2011 until fall of 2012, like roughly, or I say until Hurricane Sandy. The hurricane didn't end the open mic, but
I was in high school at that time.
It was just coincidentally when I got my first real job, and didn't feel like at the time, I didn't feel like I had the time. It's funny what adulting feels like at 25 versus your early 30s. It's a very different feeling.
What's your advice? Wait. This is a perfect. I'm sorry, this is a mini question inside a question, but
yeah.
What advice do you have right now to young creatives that are in their 20 somethings and feel like they're failing right now because they cannot make their passion lucrative at this point? I know, because you just brought up that very big like page turner. So
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
sorry to throw. We'll get back to the coffee company in a
no,
minute, but this
no
is
problem.
like
No problem. Man, I feel so fortunate in my situation. I don't know if I have a great answer, because a lot of my answers come in the form of high education and a dream job that pays my bills. But I'll say, like, if you have a job that you don't love but is providing the income, and you're doing music on the side, like, I guess maybe in the beginning it'll feel like you don't have time, and that's because, like, the full-time job thing is also going to be a new feeling. You got to get used to all of that stuff at the same time, but it's not always going to feel like that, and you will gain energy and stamina to live for your passion after work. It'll get better. I did it for years. I can say that I was a paraprofessional. I worked, that was a good experience to ultimately be a music therapist with the population I mainly worked with, and maybe will again. I was at many different schools. It's a hard job. It can feel thankless because you're with the kids all the time, but you're low on the pay totem pole. Your clinical opinions are not respected, and also the best information isn't given to you, and yet you're expected. It's very difficult. And yet, I would say, my first of those jobs, I'd like go home and like pass out. Like, let's say in 2013, that would be how it was. In 2015, 16, 17, I'd spring out of work, change my clothes, and I'd hop on a train to the city to go to an open mic. Or I'd get in my car and hit up a local open mic or a show. By 2017, when I was in my music therapy internship, which took me to Queens and Nassau County, and my internship was in hospice, because again, even though I didn't go into that in music therapy, that experience was invaluable. I mean, I slept in my bed, but other than that, I mean, I was in insane traffic to get to 2 bridges and tunnels and back.
yes.
And then I would go straight to whatever thing I could get to. And sometimes I'd be too tired to, but I had more energy with a higher stress situation at 29 than I did at 25. You level up. You're like a Pokemon facing the 7th gym. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's not so hard anymore.
Right. And thank you for answering that. So, through all those struggles and everything, so I take it now, knowing that this Ridgewood Coffee Company open mic gig was very important to you and a very big passion project. So let's get into that. We left off around, I want to say 2013, that things started picking up for you.
Oh yeah. So then, for a bunch of years, also in that period, I didn't drive. I didn't have a car. From 2010 to 2017, I didn't drive because I was in a near-death experience, very serious accident.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, that was, trust me, a lot of therapy went a long way with that. And I began to drive again because of that aforementioned internship. And so all of a sudden in 2017, I was going more often back to Ridgewood. I never was so distant from it, but without a car and having moved, I grew up in Ridgewood, and so having moved to Montclair, unless someone could give me a ride, or once or twice I called an Uber. But in the early years of 2010 to 2017, Uber wasn't so much of a thing. I had a BlackBerry.
Nothing was good. Like,
right.
People, it was like you had to take the bus everywhere.
Oh yeah,
then,
yeah, totally. I mean, you could take a bus easily up and down Bloomfield Avenue here. It's like the subway. Do you want, if I'm in
Right.
Bloomfield and I need to get to Caldwell, no problem. But Ridgewood, no way. So when I started driving again, I was going there a lot more often. The older gentleman, Bruce Atkins, who I had handed the open mic off to, had been hosting it. And I became a regular there again. I got to know a mixture of the people that I had always known, the musicians I'd known, and a whole new, very young, like high school and college age crowd who literally were children back in 2009. They wouldn't have even been able to come, right? New generation, Generation Z, right?
That wasn't Gen Z. That's still millennials. I'm not Gen Z.
Wait, people who are like 22 right now?
I'm 25. And in 2009, I was a freshman in high school. So we weren't Gen Z.
No, but you could have come as a freshman.
I could have come. But that's the thing is my parents worked in the city and didn't get home till like 8 o'clock at night. And I lived in Ridgefield at the time. So I had no way of getting to Ridgewood.
Right. That's like I think we denied the existence of each other's towns at times.
There's a northern Bergen County?
What?
There's
Why
a
is
place
North Bergen in
Garden
Hudson
State
County,
Plaza?
south of Bergen County? That is a mystery to me.
Oh yeah.
No. So yeah. So anyway, I became a regular there a lot more, and then at one point in the fall of 2017. At this point, I'm a certified music therapist. I'm still looking for a job at that point, but life is good. I'm at the open mic night, and Bruce takes me and a friend of mine, a fellow musician, Rob Janos, outside. We were basically the only two people who were not either in our 50s or 60s or our teens and early 20s. And he took us outside and he said, I'm moving soon to Pennsylvania to be closer to my grandchildren. I would like the open mic to continue, and I feel like one of the two of you would be the ideal person, to host it. And we kind of looked at each other. We'd known each other for many years already. We liked each other. We liked each other's music. We kind of looked at each other and it was kind of, I'll do it if he does it with me. And so
that's an excellent resolution.
Oh yeah. And I mean, so what you had is my, encyclopedic knowledge of the community and my passion for the institution of the thing. And also, I mean, Rob had sound equipment, which I lacked. And Rob's the opposite of me physically. I am 5'5", rather petite fella. Rob is a large guy. So we have the same values, the same beliefs about inclusivity and, supporting the scene. And good cop, bad cop became a pretty easy dynamic for us to have. And from basically that moment on, we took over. I took it back, and we made it the best that it has ever been. Great young crowd. Almost at some points, maybe not every month. It's a weekly open mic. It happens every Monday, 6 to 8:45, and closer to gender parity than ever before. A lot more women coming in. We felt that all that needed to be done for that to happen was to just adjust the attitude towards certain older dudes in the way that they carry themselves inside the space. And all of a sudden, there were a lot more women, so we were glad about that. We felt that inclusivity has to be a thing that you actively do. You can't just hope that it happens. Well,
yeah, and you can't slap a label on it. You got to literally say like, "Hey, everybody, get in here. This is the door. Like, this is the door. Here it is. Like, we're meeting up."
Welcomed everybody. Like, in other words, like, look, if fewer people, of some demographic, didn't come, that was one thing. But if anyone ever came in, we just made them feel so at home, and people came back, and it was a really really great crowd. And then sometime in, I think, 2018, we got hit with the ASCAP BMI thing, where we could no longer do covers. And that
What's the ASCAP BMI for our listeners
music
and for
publishing
me?
companies try to make various establishments pay a licensing fee to allow, like a cabaret license, jukeboxes, but also live bands, to allow them to play covers. It's not enforced equally, but most bars have paid this thing because their liquor license profit is allowing that. A small cafe, they can't afford that. So we became an originals only open mic. And because we had a crowd full of young people who were beginning to write songs and were essentially leaning on covers as a crutch, it worked. Our community embraced being an originals and public domain. We did a lot of old blues songs. Open mic.
So now this is a question, I guess, for looking into the future. That BMI cap, is that going to continue in a
pandemic's got nothing
post-COVID word?
Yeah. Why would it? The music business, that doesn't change that. Yeah.
I know, but if the goal is to get people back into at least into a cafe for a live
BMI's
show.
goal is to make sure songwriters get paid for the work that they do.
That's right.
They and that's a noble goal, but I think those fees shouldn't be applied equally across all sorts of businesses. That's my view of it. I don't think that look, at the end of the day, I think it's great that these organizations exist to, if you wrote a song that, like, wouldn't it be great if I made a couple of bucks if someone covered my song anywhere in the country? Of course. I don't think the business should be liable for a fine because of that, though. That's just the way I see it. But that was a big test for us as a community. And we passed.
And this is another test. This has been another test.
In March of 2020, we had to stop doing the open mic night at the Ridgewood Coffee Company. We are still the Ridgewood Coffee Company open mic night for over a year now. We've been doing it over Facebook Live. You can find us, like, and subscribe at RCC Virtual Open Mic on Facebook. The way we do it is we make everyone admins, and then the page just refreshes itself and goes live. We do it this way and not like as a Zoom open mic, because we actually want to remain open. In other words, it has been mainly our insular community getting together this way, but we don't want to close it off to anybody who just happens to find our page and wants to be a part of it.
What would you say is, because, we've been talking a lot, especially, Gigless is a community now. We have highlighted and spotlighted our community in the tri-state area of creatives and professional creatives. And one of the things that I found the hardest is trying to cultivate new community in these times, like trying to get people to find you. So how have you been growing your community?
So I don't know if it's growing, but it's not shrinking.
Right.
We've had a small number of curious new people over the course of this year. It's more of a quirky thing than a common thing, but it has happened. We've made a few new virtual friends none of them have been regulars, but many of them have done it more than once. Many of them have not removed their status as admins, which means that they are getting the notifications, and ostensibly, if they ever want to play another Monday, they can. Mainly, we've kept. So at first, just like everything that happened at the beginning of the pandemic, everything's an emergency measure, stopgap, right? Until we figure out what's going on, right? But once, business as usual is in the pandemic set in. Ridgewood Coffee Company was only shuttered for a short period of time. Now, they're doing a lucrative takeout business. Anybody can go get a cup of coffee there during the same business hours as before. I highly recommend anybody listening does that. You can walk in, and it's five people at a time. Obviously, masks are required. And there's seats outside. You can sit outside. They're also right next to a park. So RCC very much exists. The business is stable. They're not, as far as we are able to know, they're not in any trouble. So we know, and I've spoken to the owner. Terry is a good guy. He's never been directly involved with the open mic night, but he has always supported us to exist within his walls. And we appreciate that about him. And he said he wants us back in there as soon as it's safe and the state regulations allow it. So it's a small cafe. You've been there, it's tiny, right? So you can't open that place up at 25%. That's the baristas.
Right.
When they're able to seat people in there, then we'll begin to have a conversation about getting the open mic back in there. And I feel very confident that eventually we will. I don't know exactly when, but so looking back on over a year of virtual open mic nights, what I can say is we didn't have to, quote unquote, do this, because it's not like if we didn't do this, there wouldn't be an open mic on the other side. The pent-up demand is the pent-up demand. We have many friends who have not played the virtual open mic for a million different reasons, including that it's just not the same for them. But if we hadn't done the virtual open mic, we see each other every week. We hear each other's songs every week. That's a wonderful thing. Many of us have written new songs, made albums in this time. We've shared.
Have you?
Yes, I have. In fact, I really wanted to do this interview with you during a period in which I was releasing new music, and that is happening right now. So first of all, last year, I was working on a big new studio album in the beginning of 2020. And we got a lot done in January and February, almost as if we knew something.
Right.
Me and my collaborator, Steve Carter, who is a great guy, makes great music under the name Sleep Talker, and is a producer. We laid down a lot of tracks, and I think we were working in the studio on some vocals the night that the NBA got canceled and that Tom Hanks got COVID. That was like the worst day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I can only imagine.
Yeah. And so, we parted ways knowing that it might be a little while before we worked on it together again. But we stayed in touch. And in the meantime, I made an album at home, right here in my living room. I made a little DIY quarantine album. I looked up old notebooks from my teenage years, and I combined them with some musical ideas that I have lying around now. And I made an album called With You in Rockland. I released that digitally last year. And then...
Can you repeat that?
With You in
Rockland?
With You in Rockland. W/U in Rockland. That's a reference to Allen Ginsberg poem called Howl, the Beatnik Generation. So I released that album, and then when the summer rolled around, the case numbers were very low, the spread was very low. So we began to work on this other album again, and we finished it. And we this whole thing, we did amazing timing, because by the time of the fall surge, we were mixing. And so now The Second Renaissance is the name of my new album. I'm releasing it. It's 8 tracks. I'm releasing it 1 track at a time on a weekly basis. Last Wednesday, track 1, Only World.
I saw that.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. Yeah. It was released to all major streaming platforms. And this Wednesday, track 2, Take the Longer Road Around, is coming out. And we're going to do this until the album is out. It's a way of giving each of the songs their time to shine. I noticed usually, I think a lot of people can relate to this if they have made records. You release an album, you drop the whole thing, and what you notice, we look at the analytics, is like all your friends listen to like the first 3 tracks, and then it's like, basically it's a curve that looks like the way we want COVID to go, right? It's like,
right.
So look, if some of the songs on this record have fewer plays, I want it to be because people, like them a little bit less. Like, I don't want track 8 to not get listened to just because it's track 8.
Right. I'm a very big believer of listening to the whole album. And if you don't like the songs, then you don't like the songs, but at least give them at least a once over,
Oh, I'm an album guy. And the way my mentality, though, is that this album has all of eternity to be a full album. For these 8 weeks, it's like WandaVision. It's coming out right now. It's a Disney Plus show.
Right. So, with your albums and with the Ridgewood Coffee Company, do you believe that in the future you're going to be able to return to the level that you were doing before the pandemic? Or what's the mindfulness that you're going into that? What is the space that you're going to be like going into that new venture with? Like, what is the headspace you're going to be going into that new venture with?
Yeah, I firmly believe, look, this is a terrible time in our history, but history shows that these times pass. I mean, there was a 1918 flu, and then there was the Roaring 20s. I'm sure there were some ragtime musicians who wondered if they were gonna, the gigs were gonna be coming in at a steady stream, and then, we know what happened, right?
Right.
And so, absolutely, things will return to full strength. I'm not making plans based on some idea of when. I just know it will happen. So I'm ready to go back to the Ridgewood Coffee Company when, you can look at the pace of vaccination. That's a pretty good way of looking at it, because you can, in Israel right now, everything's basically back to normal.
Right.
But like, that doesn't mean I don't have a date,
Yeah.
I was, busy enough with work before all this that I wasn't playing a ton of gigs anyway.
That's the weird fact. That is the weirdest fact about everybody that I've had, interviews with for Gigless. Everyone was like, I was so busy in February and March of 2020 that I literally wanted a break. That's how busy they were. And then this wasn't like 2 or 3 people. This is like, I can name 10 people, 10 guests who all had that vibe of, we're at our limit with production and everything that's going on. We just want we want a break, and then everything shut down.
I'm a big fan of Cat Stevens, and he's a big influence on me. And one of his later 70s songs, before he legendarily, right, he quit the music business and found religion for a long, long time, right? But he has a song called Bad Breaks. He said, I must be headed for a breakdown. And yeah, in my work, I was at the tail end of many years of building my career that I don't think I realized that I had become a guy who wasn't gonna ever say no, or was never gonna ask my boss for time. I love my job and my employers. We're a mom and pop place, so like my employers are the coolest people. And look, if I went about asking for time off to travel for a period, or to do a thing, if I went about it the right way, got myself covered, it would be fine. But guess what? I wasn't even trying. I lied to myself and said I was trying. I wasn't trying. So this was a reality check about balance in life. Like, I don't want to work less. I want to make a point of creating more space to pursue these things. So I wasn't gigging as much also because it was funny. You mentioned that you're 25. That's interesting because when I was 25, I moved to Montclair and I hit a second wind in terms of playing DIY gigs because basically a ton of people who are roughly your age were in college at the time and they were booking and they liked my music. They didn't think I was old or whatever. And I got a ton of gigs. I played the Meat Locker in that period. I played a lot of the DI, in summer 2014, there was the Bat Cave. There was there were all kinds of places around, too many to name.
Right.
And I got a lot more, gigs then. And I was also a student again then myself. I was a grad student, but I was a student again. I was working only part-time. Working full-time, your cohort growing up and not booking as much either made it much, much harder for me. But now I don't have that attitude. I think that I think it's a lame excuse now. Oh, you're dependent on college kids where you get older and they stay the same age to book you. That seems weird. I realized that I could have been doing more to, have direct relationships with venues. Also to level up a little bit too. I love the DIY scene and I'll play any gig that I can get into it. I play indie folk. I don't know if my style of music's been buried in the lead of this podcast, but I play indie folk music, kind of like the Mountain Goats, or Bright Eyes, or the Decemberists, Tallest Man on Earth, that kind of music. That's my thing. And so, look, any college oriented space or DIY venue that's into that sound that wants to have me, I'd be honored to play in. But at the same time, I can also play at coffee shops, bars, nice restaurants. My tablet and ultimateguitar.com are my friend. I can do many covers. I can sprinkle in my originals in a way that doesn't feel like I'm betraying my art. I can switch hit that way. There's the DIY scene. There's also the local professional musicians, music scene, the giggers, the people who play paid gigs. I can do all of that, and I only wasn't because I didn't have the will to really hustle to get. And then there's always busking. I spent summer of 2020. By summer I mean March to November of 2020, playing on the street. I love to play on the corner of South Park Street and Church in Montclair, right around the corner from Java Love. I actually have been playing there on a weekly basis for the past month. And it's fun. I make some tips. I make friends with the locals. I feel it's a different beast from gigs and open mics too. It's a community.
It's open air.
It's open air. It's a community thing. I'm eclectic. I do stuff that I wouldn't do. I play Wheels on the Bus for children. I sing, all the verses of This Land Is Your Land. I sing leftist stuff once all the diners are gone and it's only the people cleaning up after them. I sing protest songs, especially last year when everything was going on. In fact, the last time that I busked in 2020 was the night that Biden clinched the Electoral College victory, which was an unseasonably warm night. And that was, I'd never lived in a town like Montclair. I grew up, Ridgewood is a more suburban, maybe it's bluer now because of the shift in, the country and the suburbs overall, right? But not when I was there. When I was there, it was an old school, old money, conservative kind of town. A lot of towns around here. Montclair has a historical progressive side to it. It's got different sides. It's got problematic sides too. But like it was a very different feeling, and to be there.
Yeah, especially to experience that whole thing as a musician. And now, you talking about, all of this stuff with you just like playing on the corner, which is bussing, right? Yeah, like, so we're going through your whole history. We're going through, and we're even looking at like something that you just do for the sheer joy of playing on the corner. What is like, as a professional and as a musician, have you been able to separate, and this is going to be like my last question because we're almost out of time, but I love talking to you. You're a great conversationalist.
I think I told you that you were going to need to rein me in.
Yeah. So, a lot of people, what happens is that, and it's happened with me and it's happened with almost everyone I know that professionally does for a steady paycheck, some kind of creative job. How have you been able to find the joy professionally, especially this past year, the joy on a personal note, separated from your professionalism? Because your professionalism, you're a music therapist, you're dealing with heavy issues, you're dealing with, people on a daily basis. But for your personal creativity, like how have you been able to find the joy in that? And have you been taking pauses in it or anything like that?
That is the joy, though. That's where the joy is. When I busked last summer, it was some of the, I have happy memories from 2020 because I busked. In Ridgewood, they had the Ridgewood Musicians Guild too. So I was playing there one night a week or two sometimes. They're placing me there. And I would, afterwards, I would go get ice cream with a friend of mine, a guy named John Simon, who, later on in his life discovered he was a songwriter. And we would get ice cream. And, I can now say, hey, John Simon, remember when we would get ice cream in summer of 2020 in the middle of the COVID pandemic after we played our sets? Those were good times. Like, right. Not everybody has anything like that from 2020, but we're blessed to be musicians. I made the best record I have ever made, and now I get to share it with everybody. I'm grateful for that. And I am already writing songs towards the next record. And that, that's also exciting, that there is a future. And you know what? It's kind of cool that, I don't know what it must be like to be like Taylor Swift right now, where you've made like 3 damn albums and you haven't toured behind them yet. Like, right. Like that, she must be champing at the bit to do it. But at the same time, what's cool is that, this is true of everybody. When the bands go back out to tour these records that they have made and they play older material, no one's going to be sick of their songs. The audience will be sick of it. The bands will have only just started playing them. Normally, like by the time you get out on the road, you've played the damn things to death, right? Now it's like nothing is gonna be stale. I'm excited about that I have these songs I've written that if I played virtually, I played on the corner, I played at an outdoor gig here and there, like this and that. But like they haven't been played the amount I would have played them otherwise.
Right. And so I want to wrap up this show with just saying that Kafka on the Shore is, just so you know, I love Haruki Murakami.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite authors.
I love that. That book blew my mind.
I have not read Kafka on the Shore yet.
But
I've read Norwegian Wood.
Yep.
South of the Border, West of the Sun.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've currently, because it's on my ebook, it's on my like Kindle, or my Nook. I'm reading like one, like
Oh, was that like 1Q84?
Yeah, I can't think of the numbers, but that one, that book
84.
is
Like, what is he
huge.
saying? Yeah, I have that
And
on.
then I've also read In the Dark. Like there was a point in my college life where every Murakami book I could possibly get my hands on, I would read it.
Wind Up Bird Chronicle. Have you hit that one yet?
I'm about to do that. I'm about to do the Wind Up Bird Chronicle.
I maybe liked that book. Maybe liked it a little more than Kafka on the Shore, but there's no way you can write one song about the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. When you read both books, you'll get why I chose Kafka on the Shore to write a song about.
But he's one of my favorite authors.
Because my song sort of tells the story of that book. That's something I was proud of. So you know what's funny is ever since I've been releasing this new album, I'm now on all the analytics, Spotify for artists and all that stuff, right? I think not big by any means, but I think Kafka on the Shore has like a scattered international following among people like you who are fans of Murakami. And I know this is true of me. If I finish a good book or a movie or a Netflix show or whatever it is that captures me, I almost need some supplemental content to help me it's like a methadone for the thing,
Right, to come down.
And I think people read Kafka on the Shore, it blew their minds, and they were Googling for something else, and they found me. There are people in Peru, in the Netherlands. I don't know. I mean, I'm honored. Thank you if you are out there. If I wish I could speak Spanish or Dutch, but
I think it's I know it's gracias, and I think it's danke.
Well, yes, you're right. Thank you. You're right.
Sorry if it's wrong.
To say thank you. You're right.
Yeah, I'm sorry to any Dutch person that's listening if I messed up saying thank you.
I think danke is German, but it might be Dutch too, and it might be close enough. I feel like a German person and a Dutch person talking would like have trouble like Spanish and Italian. They'd have some trouble understanding each other, but I'd be like, oh yeah, I think I know what he's talking about.
We get the overall, yeah. So Andrew, thank you so much for being on this episode of Gigness. Of Gigless, not Gigness. Well, I guess it's Gigness. I guess there is gigs. There's gigs coming back, so that's good. We're not all
out of the igneous rock.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm like, again, you're a plethora of knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing what you've done for your community and how it's grown throughout the years, and also enlightening the listeners about music therapy as a profession. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm I'm honored to be a part of the community, and I don't plan for that to change anytime soon.
So where can our listeners follow you?
Okay, so
what are your platforms?
Right, basically what I mainly want is please, I would be so honored if you check out my album. It is currently being released one track at a time every Wednesday. Only World, track 1 is up. Take the Longer Road Around, track 2's coming this Wednesday. It's everywhere. Go look me up, Andrew Nieporent, Nieporent. Look me up on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube. It's there, Amazon, wherever the hell else you get it. Also, I have a Bandcamp page where you can, support me, download more directly. Also, if you find out that you really enjoy what I do and you want a lot more than the records that are on the mainstream services, my Bandcamp has deep cuts, old stuff with my band in college, live albums, rarities, an electronic music album that I made that is a thing. It's not, I'm not going to call it good. It's just a thing, et cetera, et cetera. You can find that at crazyworks.bandcamp.com because sometimes crazy works.
Sometimes crazy does work, and in this case, it does. So thank you so much for being on this episode of Gigless, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Gigless podcast, hosted by Remi L and produced by Dan Wagner. The song used in our intro and outro is Beach Walk by Unicorn Heads. If you enjoyed this podcast, head over to our social media pages on Instagram at Gigless Podcast and our website, giglesspodcastblog.wordpress.com. There, you can find out more about the artist, contact the host and producer, and find out more about our schedule. Thank you.